Okay, so the spontaneous collectives of Aragon. Um, I want to talk about these collectives, um, sort of this time in history during the Spanish Civil War um, in this region of Aragon. Um, I'm getting all my information from this book, uh, With the Peasants of Aragon by Augustin Souchy. He's this anarchist, journalist guy, um, and he did a bunch of traveling and at some point he traveled through Aragon during this time when there was this massive collectivization movement, and he wrote a book about it, which is great. Um, so Aragon, what's special about Aragon? Um, so it's the Spanish Civil War. This is a region of Spain. It's very rural. There's a lot of peasants, um, and so before the Civil War, there's like a bunch of peasants who work the fields, and then like rich landowners. But when the fighting starts, all the rich people like get out of there, and so the peasants are just like left to their own devices. Um, and then this happens. So the people of the village. This is a quote from the book. The people of the villages held general town meetings. They agreed to work in collectives. Um, so like approximately 500,000 people established collectivism. Um, there's this transformation from private property into collective property. It was really very cool, and this is like one of the best examples of like anarchist values actually put into practice. This is like one time that it actually happened. But who worked the fields? They did. Um, so they made work groups, usually numbering 5 to 10 members. Group might consist of like friends or neighbors, and when one group finished, it helped the other groups. Um, and so they just like agreed to do this. It wasn't a big deal. These people knew how to work the fields, and they did it themselves. So they were organized, but there wasn't any like boss system. Okay. Um, and so they were able to do it without any sort of like hierarchy of like who is hiring who owns someone else. Like they were like, we're not doing that anymore. Money. So the towns pretty much like abolished money. Um, so they did keep money around, like just to exchange with other localities, but they kind of just like, I mean, I picture them like throwing all their money in a big pile, and then they're just like, okay, this is a resource that we can use as a town, and like we as a town can decide what we want to use our money for. But like within the town, there was no need for money because everything's collectivized. Everyone shares all of the property. Um, but what if I don't want to join the individualists? So there were holdouts. There were people who said like, I don't know about this. I don't want to. I don't want to give all of my land, all of my cattle, or whatever it is I own to the collective. Seems risky. That's okay. This is a quote from a constitution of one of the towns. One of the towns made this constitution for themselves to talk about like how to determine the relations between the collectivists and the individualists. Um, so, like, big point, the collectivists shall respect the individualists. Like, in each of these towns, the collectivists far outnumber the individualists. Um, like, 80% collectivized kind of thing. But they said, like, yeah, anyone who doesn't want to be in the collective, you can leave. This is voluntary. We're going to respect each other, and I really like this point. This is really interesting, and this popped up in more than one town. They said, like, we're not going to let people hire each other anymore. Exploitation of man by man will never be permitted to return. So they say, like, You can work your own private land as an individual with the understanding that you can't have more land than you can cultivate yourself. So it's just like an interesting like value that they're like, listen, we're going to respect each other, blah, 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 but there's like a hard line here, which is like being a wage laborer. Like that's not going to be a thing anymore. How do people eat? This is a cool bit of dialogue. So this is Augustin Souchy is like talking to this guy. He's going in one of the towns, and he's saying, this is in Muniesa. I don't know how to pronounce that. We walked through the town one Sunday afternoon. The bakery was open. Anyone can come for whatever bread he wants. Are there not abuses of this? This is Augustin Souchy speaking. No, answers the old man who gives out the bread. Everyone takes as much as they actually need. Wine is also distributed freely, not rationed. Doesn't anyone get drunk? Until now, there has not been a single case of drunkenness. It's just like very cool. Like people are not abusing the system. Like I think that's something that I might have thought would happen. Where it's like, oh, like you give people free handouts, they're just going to abuse the system. And it's like, well, here's a case where that actually happened, and we can see that people did not abuse the system. People were like pretty cool with it. These peasants, this is something that stood out to me. They're not dumb. They are organized. A lot of these peasants like already knew about anarchist like philosophy, and they were like kind of well read. So this is in the town of Oliet. The town of Oliet was like led by, or like the collectivization of Oliet was led by these two anarchists who had like emigrated to France for a while. Eventually they return, and they come back to their town of origin and they try to turn it into a collective. And so it says, their efforts fell on fertile soil. The ideas of these people were known in the town. Collectivization had been studied for many long years. Theory up to then, it was put into practice now. Pretty cool. So this is sort of my book report on With the Peasants of Aragon. Very cool. I thought it was very interesting to read. You can check it out yourself here. I suggest you do. Like it's awesome. You can use this QR code for the link, but it's the anarchistlibrary.org, and it's just a website, and it just has like one big like text. It just has the entire text. So I definitely encourage you to go read it. The book is broken down into like, in the beginning, it talks about like this was basically what happened. This is the context. Here's like how a collective is structured, and then the majority of the book is just town by town. He just goes like, okay, now I'm in the town of Oliet, and here's what stands out to me. Now I'm in the town of Muniesa, and here's what stands out to me, for like 15 different towns. So that's the structure of the book. Very cool. All right. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.